Hello, welcome to Driver Suit Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. As I said last week, I had to record earlier than I normally do because I had some things going on. I'm still working on a few projects, and I'm going to be trying out a new video editor for next week's episode, so uh, there may or may not be a difference in quality. I don't know as of right now. Well, after I finish the podcast, both the news about the Xfinity Series broadcast deal and the NASCAR Hall of Fame vote occurred. Now, while I considered re-recording, I decided against it because it would just be too much effort for what I didn't think would be a good output. And in retrospect, this was a good move because when it comes to the Xfinity Series broadcast deal, I've gone back and forth on this, and I really don't know if this is a good move or a bad move. And again, I've gone back and forth on this, but let's talk about the NASCAR Xfinity Series deal in detail. And this is a quote from NASCAR.com, link in the description, and this is about the new deal. The CW network will become the exclusive home to the NASCAR Xfinity Series starting in 2025 and extending through the 2031 racing season. The CW will broadcast 33 live NASCAR Xfinity Series races annually, along with practice and qualifying events each weekend. Starting in 2025, for the first time in series history, every NASCAR Xfinity Series will be available on free over-the-air broadcast television with additional content available on the CW's digital platforms. All NASCAR racing series and other content will be fully produced by the Emmy Award-winning NASCAR Productions Group in close collaboration with the CW network. Now, this next part comes from a separate article on NASCAR.com, and it answers some questions about the agreement. I'm going to read this whole thing because it is pertinent. Link in the description. How long is the agreement? Answer: it's a 7-year deal beginning in 2025 and running through 2031. Question: where can I watch the NASCAR Xfinity Series races? For the rest of this year, still on NBC Sports and USA Network. In 2024, still on Fox and NBC networks, but beginning in 2025, all 33 Xfinity Series will air live exclusively on the CW network and the CW app, as will the majority of practice and qualifying sessions. By the way, NASCAR.com, you need somebody to proofread this, because the first two sentences weren't full sentences. Can you tell me more about the CW network? CW Network is a quote-unquote major free-to-air broadcast network and one of just 5 major broadcast networks fully distributed, available in 100% of U.S. households, approximately 125 million homes. What do I need to sign up for the app? Answer: the CW app is available for free to all customers. There's no authentication required, so meaning any fan with a broadband connection can access. The app offers live streaming of all sports content airing on the CW, which includes the Xfinity Series in 2025, as well as entertainment and sports content on an on-demand basis. Has the Xfinity Series ever had all of its race available on NASCAR? I copied this directly from your website. You really need to proofread. Seriously, this is not a joke. I'm gonna ask this question again, but I'm gonna fix a major issue with the sentence. Question: has the NASCAR Xfinity Series ever had all of its races available on a free-to-air network? No, 2025 will be the first time. Question: what other sports are there on the CW network? Answer: sports programming is a key component of the CW network. It recently acquired ACC football and basketball rights, as well as Inside the NFL and LIV Golf. Okay, just have a sip of water. Okay. Now, the obvious question here: is this a good move? I could make arguments either way. The fact that it kicks NBC out is a good move in and of itself. I'm sorry, but the once great powerhouse NBC Sports has been in a death spiral for many years, and in terms of racing and sports, they've lost Formula One, the NHL, Now they're going to lose the Xfinity series, even though Xfinity is owned by Comcast Corporation, which also owns NBC. It's also good from I don't want to say competition, because that would be the wrong word. I'll go with competition, because even with the ACC, NASCAR will get a higher priority than they do on NBC. Plus, the fact that the CW app is free for all customers and you don't need to be a paying customer is a good selling point too. Well, let's move from the good to the bad. We'll get this out of the way. First off, the CW is not exactly a well-established sports broadcasting entity. Hell, 6 months ago today, they didn't have any national sports broadcasting deals, just local affiliates. Today, they have the ACC, which they share with ESPN, LIV Golf, the less said about that, the better, and now the Xfinity Series. It needs to be noted that the CW isn't really producing this content, just broadcasting it. And in terms of signing the ACC, on the surface, it might seem like a great move. Realistically, A, they're splitting it with ESPN, which is very critical to my argument, and B, they don't have a lot of powerhouse teams. It's not exactly a powerhouse conference since the ACC consists of Boston College, Clemson, Duke, Florida State, Georgia Institute of Technology, Louisville, Miami, North Carolina Chapel Hill, North Carolina State, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Virginia, Virginia Polytechnic Institute, and State and Wake Forest. Some are better in football, some are better in basketball, but there aren't a lot of powerhouse teams in that conference. Now, my other issue is with the lack of secondary channels. Now, say what you want to about ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox, but they have a number of different channels that broadcast can be transferred to. So if there is a conflict on, let's say ESPN, one can be broadcast on ESPN, one can be moved to ESPN 2 or 3. The CW lacks this, and since weather delays are an issue no matter what sport you're talking about, this will probably cause some conflict. Now, the lack of producing sports and overall lack of sports experience can be very harmful for the CW. Again, many local CW affiliates have deals with leagues such as Major League Baseball, but the CW as a whole is just starting out. I've done some research, but I can't figure out for the life of me who's in charge of the sports division, who's there already, who will be brought in, who will be working on the CW side. Okay, and you're not again, these aren't high school games. This isn't even a local MLB thing here. This is national. This is the big time. The CW had better come out swinging because it's not outside the realm of possibility that a better platform will become available between now and 2031. I'm willing to bet one might come between now and 2025. Well, what happens then? If the CW falls flat and in the first few years, the fans turn on it, where do you go? And this is not a remote possibility because this is a brand new sports division from a previous non-sports entity, and they could very easily fumble the ball here. So when it comes to the CW deal, to make a long story short, I don't know where I stand right now. I'm going to wait till I see the final product, but I'm keeping my expectations low. NASCAR doesn't seem to be in too much of a hurry to talk about the remainder of their broadcasting deal, if it's been finished at all, but I'll discuss that when it happens. And I say this because, according to an article from the Sports Business Journal, link in the description, as of August 1st, quote, the 7-year, $800 million Xfinity Series deal should help NASCAR as it closes its media rights agreements for its Cup and Truck Series. NASCAR officials have said they expect those deals to close by the fall. It's difficult to compare the CW's Xfinity deal with the circuit's current agreement since it was included in the largest deal signed by incumbents Fox and NBC. Fox and NBC remain in the driver's seat to renew those deals. A package of around 6 mid-season races is also available. That package, akin to the one Turner Sports, I hate saying Turner Sports when it comes to NASCAR, that Turner Sports carried a decade ago likely will land with a streaming company such as Amazon. Those stream races will be exclusive to whichever streaming company picks them up. NASCAR has not been in a big rush to finish these negotiations, especially considering it has a season and a half left on its current deals. Talk so far has slowed on price. NASCAR had wanted to generate a significant increase in its media revenue over its current deal, which was averaged $820 million. The size of the CW's Xfinity deal should allow that to happen, as it marks a big investment by a relatively unexpected buyer. NASCAR had initially looked into shopping the Xfinity series to streaming companies. I mean, I don't like the idea of streaming only. A lot of fans don't like the idea of streaming only. I think that every streaming company seems to be either hanging on for dear life, or they see the executioner's axe a coming is kind of a bit major issue here. Okay. Now, as I said last week when I had to record my podcast 2 days earlier than normal, I mentioned my thoughts on the Hall of Fame, and I said that I didn't know when the vote would happen, and it actually took place before the podcast aired, so I apologize for that. But I will say that I think the right people got in. I really don't need to say anything more than that. I'm going to have a sip of water before I talk about this last story. Okay. Let's talk the elephant in the room. Let's talk Noah Gragson. All I can say is, what the fuck, Noah Gragson? What the fuck? If you haven't heard, this is from an ESPN article, link in the description. Quote, driver Noah Gragson has been suspended indefinitely by NASCAR and Legacy Motor Club due to liking an insensitive meme with a photo of George Floyd's face. Quote, I am disappointed in myself for my lack of attention and action on social media, end quote. Gragson posted Saturday. I understand the severity of the situation. I love and appreciate anyone. I try to treat everyone equally, no matter who they are, and I messed up, plain and simple. Josh Berry will be in the number 42 Chevrolet, making his debut in Sunday's Cup race at Michigan International Speedway to replace Gragson. George Floyd, who was black, was murdered by a white police officer in 2020, and his death sparked mass protests around the world and forced a national reckoning on racial injustice. In the wake of Floyd's death, NASCAR banned the Confederate flag at events and venues after Bubba Wallace, its lone back driver, said there was no place for it in the sport. It should be noted that a similar ban had been announced prior, but was never really enforced prior to the George Floyd event. Earlier that year, Cup Series driver Kyle Larson used a racial slur while playing a video game. Chip Ganassi Racing filed Larson. He was suspended by NASCAR, and he was required to complete a sensitivity training for reinstatement. NASCAR said that Gragson violated the member conduct of its rulebook. Quote, his actions do not represent the values of our team, Legacy Motors Club said in a statement. The 25-year-old Gragson, who is from Las Vegas, is in his first full season of the Cup Series and is number 33 in points. Okay. I'm not going to talk about or show the meme in question. I've seen it. It's disgusting. But here's the question I need to ask Noah Gragson. In what part of your brain did you think that posting it or commenting on it was a good idea? You've had other famous people get run off for a lot less than that. I personally think that the suspension should be till the end of the season, and the message needs to be sent that this type of thing will not be tolerated at all. It needs to be said that this is disgusting, and this type of behavior should not be tolerated. And with that, I take my first break, and I'll discuss AEW next. So we're back. As I said, I like wrestling and I'm a fan of AEW. AEW isn't good, but that's why I watch it. By comparison, WWE is a promotion where everything happens for a reason. In WWE, everything happens, makes sense to a certain extent, and in WWE, there is a very high standard of professionalism. AEW, by comparison, looks like the backyard wrestling I did in high school. Instead of being on a camcorder VHS, it's on national television. It's not bad, but it's so bad that it's good. I bring this up because there were three things that happened that I felt the need to discuss. And originally there were two, but then there were three AEW stories that I couldn't help but discuss, but with last week I couldn't get to them, so I'm bringing up this week. The first story comes with some new safety protocols and regulations that AE announced during the middle of July. The announcement was made that there will be two new lists of rules, one set banned, the other set restricted. The list of things that are banned are as follows. Chair shots to the head, chair shots to the back of the head, buckle bombs, any move where wrestlers fall backwards into a turnbuckle, imitating concussion or seizure symptoms while selling a move, spitting, bleeding while in the crowd, using weapons or projectiles in the club, throwing anything with blood on it into the crowd, taking food and drinks from fans in the crowd, and finally making contact with fans in the crowd. Now, I get these since all of these things have happened and have also caused problems, not just in AEW, but in general. And I have a feeling that those rules will be strictly enforced. It's the list of moves and actions that require pre-approval that just need to be laughed at. The list of stuff that supposedly requires pre-approval are as follows. Spots and bumps on the ring apron and outside. Table, ladder, chair shots in and out of the ring, parentheses only allowed with padding. Any elevated spots outside of the barricade, dives and ladder spots on stage around the arena and other places outside of the ring. All pile driver variations, including sit-down drivers, inverted position, hurricane rana, vertebreakers, and tombstone pile drivers. High-risk dives or over-the-top moves, parentheses 450, 630, double moonsaults, SSP, etc. Intentional bleeding, parentheses of any sport, not just blading. Throwing people into, through, over ring steps, commentary table, bell table, or guardrails or barricades. Weapon usage. Chairs, pipes, candlesticks, hammers, ring bells, bats, chains, etc., title belts, thumbtacks, skewers, barbed wire, and other sharp puncturing objects, powders, aerosol sprays, or liquids. Throwing any weapons or objects, chairs, etc. Choking, strangling with hands or a weapon or hanging spots. Injury, spots, or angles, whether or not medical is involved or called to the ring. Any physicality in the crowd or crowd brawling. Any physicality involving referees, managers, extras, celebrities, or special guests. Well, I think it would be fair to say that we all have rules at work that are so impractical that not even the most devoted of managers would consider enforcing them. And this is a list clearly meant to please the broadcasters and or lawyers. And I say this because this list constitutes at least 85%, if not more, of what the wrestlers do, both on television and at house shows. You'd have to have a rubber stamp mentality to approve all of this. It would be insanely time-consuming. And we already know AEW is a disaster behind the scenes, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. We all have rules and regulations that are impractical at work, and this is obviously an attempt to placate some entities. There's no way this is actually being enforced. Now let's get to another issue that AEW can't seem to figure out. Battle of the Belts. So 4 times a year, AEW will have a special event called Battle of the Belts, which is on either TNT or TBS. Each of these episodes have 3 matches or for a championship of some kind. Now, on the surface, this seems like a good move to bring in fans, but there's one issue that's not working out too well. The first two Battle of the Belts were in January and April of 2022, respectively. In both of these, a championship changed hands in the first match. The first time a title changed hands was Sammy Guevara defeating Dustin Rhodes for the AEW TNT Championship at the first event, and the second was Sammy Guevara defeated Scorpio Sky at the second event for the AEW TNT Championship. While that was a good start, these were the only two matches where a championship changed hands. In the following 5 Battle of the Belts between October 22nd, 2022 and July 15th, 2023, not one single championship changed hands in any capacity. Even when you factor the first two events in, only 2 titles changed hands in 6 matches. I calculated some stats here. In 21 matches between January 2022 and July 2023, titles have changed hands twice, amounting to 10.5% of matches. The title was retained 19 times for 89.5% of the matches on Battle of the Belts. And the only title to actually change hands was the AEW TNT Championship, which changed hands twice on 2 shows. You factor in the other 2 times where the AEW TNT Championship was successfully defended twice, it makes up 19% of all championship defenses on Battle of the Belts. The other championships that were defended on Battle of the Belts were well, let's just look at them. First, we'll start off with the AEW titles, which make up 76.2% of all title defenses. We discussed the TNT Championship. There were 2 other championships that have been defended 4 times. The All Atlantic / International Championship, which is, it's not even a real championship. The AEW Women's World Championship was defended 4 times. The TBS, which is the secondary women's championship, was defended 3 times. And the AEW World Tag Team Champions was defended once. Interestingly enough, there were a total of 5 championships that don't totally fall under the AEW brand, which make up 23% of all titles on Battle of the Belts. These include the Ring of Honor World Championship, defended twice, the Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship, defended twice, and the FTW Championship, defended once, for 9.5%, 9.5%, and 4.8% respectively. AEW also has 2 championships that were never defended on Battle of the Belts: the AEW World Championship and the World Trios Championship. With those stats, I need to ask the question, why is Battle of the Belts still a thing? Why have a title-centric event where you haven't had a title change in a year and a half? Why? What does this accomplish? What sense does this make? What does this solve? Nothing. It's a waste of Friday night television time, and the ratings are in. People aren't watching it. I can promise you that if Battle of the Belts went away tomorrow, nobody would notice, and even fewer people would care. Now, this would have been the end of my talk about AEW, but there's more. And I was working on this script for this week's episode. The Lufisto controversy happened. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. As much as I like AEW, it was clear to objective people that there are a lot of problems in AEW. Well, Lufisto certainly proved that point. In an interview with Fightful.com, link in the description, Lufisto goes into detail about her experiences with AEW during the April 6, 2022 tapings in Boston, Massachusetts. Lufisto worked for the AEW Dark Elevation tapings, teaming with Emi Sakura and the Bunny against Ruby Soho, NJ, and Sky Blue. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dark and Dark Elevation were AEW's exclusive YouTube shows, and only the diehards of the diehards watched it. Since the interview itself is rather lengthy, Cage-side seats broke down a list of the things that were brought up. So according to Lufisto, she had set up her appearance with Elevation with QT Marshall, which was supposed to be mainly an interview slash tryout for a coaching position. There was some confusion about medical testing and paperwork. Lufisto is a Canadian citizen from Quebec, which will be an issue multiple times in this story. Fortunately, everything got sorted out for her to be at the April 6th show in Boston. She was greeted at the venue by Sean Dean. She was then left to wait in the locker room area. It was there that she said hi to the bunny, who allegedly responded, "What are you doing here?" So Bunny was seated with Ruby Soho and Tony Storm in the locker room. Jade Cargill was also there, seated separately. None of them spoke to her. Now, Mercedes Martinez, who is someone that she knew from the outside, AEW said she was happy to see her. She later says Thunder Rosa was there and no one was speaking to her. According to Lufisto, her priority was to talk to Tony Khan about a coaching position, but she never met him. She had nice initial conversations with Mark Henry, Christian Cage, and Dustin Rhodes. There was some confusion about her match, who was working it, if she'd do her entrance, etc. At what point, while waiting, she came across Rhodes and Soho and believes that they were talking about her. Lufisto claims Rhodes' demeanor towards her changed after his conversation with Soho, with the next words being, quote, "So all French-Canadian people are some fucking asshole, eh?" Her match ended up being with Bunny and Emi Sakura against Soho, NJ, and Sky Blue. Lufisto was going to start with Blue, so she tried to talk to her about what they were going to do, but didn't get much for her. In the interview, Lufisto theorizes that the reason was because she's either bland as a person or she's not allowed to talk. Now, let me just stop right there. If you've seen the RJ City interview that he did with Sky Blue, she can't talk. It's just, you have to watch it because it's one of the best, worst wrestling interviews I've ever seen in my life. But anyway, so I don't think it was Sky Blue's fault. She just doesn't know how to talk very well. Back to the article. Nothing major goes wrong during the match, but there's some confusion about what Lufisto should do around the finish. When she got backstage afterwards, Rhodes was waiting for her to say that she was terrible. She claimed she had to press him to explain what issues he had, which were mostly about selling for the contracted talent. She asked some male talent she knew for feedback on her match, but no one had watched it. One of them tells her that nobody watches the matches in AEW. This unnamed person told her that wrestlers pretty much do what they want, and I'm not saying that in a good way, end quote. Another got back to Lufisto later after watching her match to say that it wasn't bad, she just did what she could with the limited time. Okay. Lufisto described what she observed backstage as chaotic, and remembers watching people sit in the same area while talking shit about each other and thinking, "I'm with fucking children." After the appearance, Lufisto had issues getting paid. These were apparently due to more confusion about her work visa and other paperwork, and she's barely heard from Marshall or others she dealt with since appearing. Other issues Lufisto said she witnessed or has heard about backstage at AEW include women politicking to protect their positions and setting others up to look bad in the ring. Lufisto did interact with Britt Baker during her visit, but says that Baker is one person at the company who's been told does these things, and that men who aren't invested in women's wrestling having power of the division. She also generally noted that there wasn't a defined power structure in the company. Well, that all came out not long ago, and it generated a response from AEW in the form of all hands defending the company on Twitter or X, whatever the fuck it is this week. Lufisto expected this and proceeded to tweet, quote, "Had a 1-hour phone call with a current AEW talent. The women who addressed the problems I did today were the ones sent on by Tony Khan. There was a meeting to shoot on Thunder Rosa that Khan attended. Before leaving, he reminded them that her segments were the lowest. English is not her first language, so it is kind of difficult reading all of this. When some girls arranged a meeting to talk about Baker's crew, one of them ran to Britt to let her know the girl that wanted to address the problem were the ones punished. Things didn't get better, they got worse, excuse me. That's literally how it's spelled here. As for the legitimate wrestlers, believe that Tony doesn't give a damn about women's wrestling and feel like they're going back to the Divas era. Ask me who the fuck I am, tell me I'm irrelevant and that I'm doing this for attention. Call me a liar, tell me to kill myself. You keep closing your eyes and supporting the human beings with shitty behavior, with messages of support, and especially this phone call I received from AEW employees. This nobody did the right thing. Okay. We've seen this kind of shit in the past from AEW. And it's been said this before, but it's clear that Tony Khan lets the inmates running the asylum. The problem is, unlike in previous generations, the internet is what it is, and these kinds of stories have a way of getting out. AEW, like every other wrestling federation in the world, needs talent to survive, and if this kind of backstage bullshit continues, they're going to have a lot of trouble finding talent or keeping talent. It's almost like this is Hulk Hogan if an entire company is run up by Hulk Hogan's in terms of politicking, backstabbing, etc. And while an argument can be made that, well, this is just one story, it does seem to gel with a lot of other stories I've heard, and I really like AEW. Hell, I even own an AEW ring-used turnbuckle pad. But it's clear that these problems are systemic, and if something doesn't change, I don't hold out hope for the future. This has to be dealt with, but sadly, it probably won't. Okay, that was a mouthful. I'm going to take a break, then we'll talk about some human stupidity next. So, welcome back. I read this story, I laughed my ass off, and I have to discuss this for the final segment. It's a short one, but it's well worth it. This is another instance of somebody ruining their own lives via their own stupidity, and I had to laugh because, again, it just proves that some people are just too dumb to live. This is from a Fox 5 DC article, link in the description. Our story takes us to Washington County, Maryland. This isn't a Florida Man story, but would you really be surprised if it was? According to Fox 5 DC, a 48-year-old man was taken into custody after stealing a number of blasting caps. According to the article, this was reported to police because the suspect's, quote, estranged wife reported to authorities that she had found suspicious items in the basement of their home. Also, according to the article, for those of you who don't know, blasting caps are highly sensitive devices used with explosives to initiate controlled detonations for construction, mining, and demolition. Officials say the devices can be extremely dangerous. The article also clarifies that, quote, investigation concluded that Thompson stole blasting caps from his employer, Rust-Oleum, which uses them within its fire suppression systems. So this guy, who I will not mention by name, is twice as dumb as normal. First off, if you're doing illegal things, don't let your spouse know. Don't tell them. Don't give them access to them. At least try and hide them so they can't find the evidence. This would be a good move if the two of them were deeply in love. If you and your spouse are estranged and she's in your house, that's just asking for trouble. Never, never, never give your spouse or significant other rope, because at the first opportunity, they will hang you with it. I've been down that road before. Believe me, it's true. Second, why would you be stealing blasting caps? Why in the world would you need them? These things can mess up experienced demolition technicians, and I'm willing to bet that a guy who works in a paint factory isn't an explosive expert. The fact that Rust-Oleum would use them as part of a fire suppression system is understandable because a lot of their products require hazardous chemicals which are flammable and can be resistant to traditional fire suppression systems, like the kinds found at restaurants and stores and other places. 3. How bad is Rust-Oleum security systems that this dude could just walk in, steal a bunch of them, and nobody notices until the guy's wife calls the cops? That's a lawsuit waiting to happen. I thought this went without saying, but I guess I'm going to have to say it. If you need explosives as part of a job, you keep them under lock and key, you limit who can access them, and you do daily audits to make sure that they're secure. I think the legal team's going to have a bit of work ahead of them, and they're going to have something to say about this. I hope they have a lot to say about this. Now, the article goes on that the suspect was charged with 8 counts of manufacturing and possessing an explosive device, 1 count of possessing explosive devices without a license, theft between $1,500 and $25,000. He is currently being held in the Washington County Detention Center without bond. And a state fire marshal said, quote, "The quick recognition of the potential hazard with these devices and her decision to immediately contact local law enforcement authorities was absolutely appropriate in this incident. This serves as a positive reminder to all members of the public of the national message, if you see something, say something." Well, he's going to prison for a while. And I really hope he likes hamburgers, since the only job he's probably ever going to be able to get again for the rest of his life involves the making and selling of them. He is a moron. He deserves no sympathy. He dug his own grave. He's going to have to lie in it. And I hope that it was worth it. And with that, episode 82 comes to a close. I'll have something ready next week. I'm Dave Frost. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you then.